open this computer. Okay, welcome everybody to today's panel discussion. We're focusing on electrical engineering today, and we have Katie Allen and Jody Ross on the panel today for electrical engineering. My name is Nicole Felderman. I do most of these interviews, so hopefully you all know me, but I work at Sevco Medical Solutions as a product manager, and I am on the SWE ECI board for K through 12 outreach. So I will pass it over to Katie if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and explain your current role.
Yeah, hi, I'm Katie Allen. I'm an electrical engineer by degree, graduated from the University of Notre Dame a number of years ago. I've spent all of my working career at Collins Aerospace here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And yeah, my current role is actually an engineering manager of electrical and mechanical engineers, of people doing the job that I started here at Collins doing. I also am on the SWE ECI board. So I've been involved, and that's part of the reason I've gotten roped into this.
And Jody, if you want to introduce yourself and explain your current role.
Hi, I am Jody Ross. I am a principal of electrical engineer. I can't say it. I've been at Collins for my entire career, about 16 years. I currently work in mission systems in the comm nav guidance department. So we make radios like that our soldiers use and backpacks and that kind of thing. I've also worked in the nav group, close to where Katie has worked before as well. And I design circuit boards. I'm from North Dakota originally, went to North Dakota State University and came here.
Awesome. Thanks for the background. And as you guys heard, both are from Collins. So we'll get some aerospace background here from the electrical engineering side. So I'll start with Katie. Can you explain what electrical engineering is and how, just what it involves from, college aspect and then beyond within your career?
Yeah, so I saw this question and I'm like, I guess electrical engineering is very broad, but I guess, I don't know, one way to think about it is it involves electricity, right? Or circuits is another way to think about it, right? So there's lots of different circuits in your everyday life, and in electricity, you think about computers and cell phones and standard sort of stuff, but also your power lines, your power grid, basically anything that has an on-off switch is powered by electricity, and somebody designed the circuit or the controls that go about to make that thing work. So, like I said, electrical engineering is a broad spectrum of making all of those things work, designing how the electricity flows. And it can go a lot of different ranges as well. There's some things that are a lot more, we call it digital oriented, right? Where there might be a computer involved, there'd be some code or things that are controlling the electrons that way. And then, there's also routes that are more what we call maybe analog or where there's basically different, levels of electricity going around. And we've got more just like really small parts, discrete things controlling how that electricity flows, and we measure that and learn things from that as well. So yeah, it goes, there's a lot of different things, but I guess that's what when I come down to it, it does, have it in the name that electricity is a big part of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jody, are you able to, going off of what Katie said from more of a background of electrical, compare it to or Collins, or in your position, how electrical engineers differ from other engineers at the company, and what electrical engineers would focus on more so than maybe like a systems engineer or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, you can kind of think of how we work here as like a tree, right? So at the top, you have your program, you have your product, you have your goal. From there, there's what is it supposed to do? And the systems engineers make up the requirements and say, okay, it needs to have this software, this hardware, it needs to do this function. So that passes down to your electrical engineers and your mechanical engineers and your software engineers and your firmware engineers. And so we all come together to make that solution. So like the systems engineers tend to be the overarching product. And like I would work on one particular circuit card within that. The software engineer writes code that goes on my product. The firmware engineer writes and creates similar to software engineer, but they will argue it is very different. The HDL or whatever to run on the circuit card. Mechanical engineers work with us to design the housing, what goes around it, how do we cool it, that kind of thing. So we all have different roles to play, but we all kind of come together in like a tree to make a product at the top.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah. When I talk about engineering to a lot of different people, you can kind of move within the different engineering areas just depending on what you're interested in. And you have an overall idea of like what engineering is or how to solve a problem, but it gets really into like those technical areas where the breakdown exists, I think. So electricity, electrical, mechanical is more of the, like you were saying, the cooling of the equipment or however that works. So trying to explain it in those different types of ways. My next question is if you can walk us through a day at the office, or if there's any projects that you guys are currently working on, just to give an idea of what types of projects electrical engineers work on. So Katie, if you want to go ahead and take a stab at that one.
Okay, yeah, great. And like I said, I guess I can take this from two different ways, give a perspective of when I've come a manager too, right? Actually, I'll let Jody handle the day-to-day of, a standard electrical engineer. That's been in my past, but, now that I'm more in the management side of things, it's a lot more of that overseeing of lots of different projects. So like, electrical engineer will get assigned to one, maybe a few, right? That they have to follow through. I'm more in charge of making sure that all of the projects our department are responsible for are going well and have the right people assigned to them, and have the right, level of priority on everybody's bucket. I'm also, like I said, now that I'm on that more manager role, I'm also am a lot more involved with people, right? I have responsibilities to make sure my engineers I feel like they have opportunities to advance and move forward, that they feel like they're supported. Also get to help if there's conflict, right? I have to make some of those priority calls on what's the thing that we should be working on, what's most important. Go off, and I also get to hire people. So I kind of like that aspect as well. I attend career fairs and tell people about what engineering is and why Collins is a great place to come and work. So, day to day, it's all very different. And like I said, I feel like I'm solving problems, just sometimes different problems, right? All of us engineers, are always solving problems. But yeah, mine are sometimes a little more people oriented than technical these days.
Yeah, great. It's good to see both sides of kind of where you can go within a career too, whether it's more people management focused or if you want to maintain that technical side and really focus and dive in on the projects that you're working on. So Jody, it sounds like maybe you're more of the technical side and can go into some projects that you're working on.
Yeah, so currently I have a few things going on. I have a circuit card that I designed like a year ago. So we do a test and verification of that. So I'll get the actual circuit board, bring it to the lab. I work with the software and firmware engineers pretty regularly to get that up and working. And then we test it to see, does it meet the requirements that I was given? How does it perform? I also have another project I am designing some more circuits. So I'll, open up my schematic tool and then we work through what's the new requirements for something coming in. How do I make that work? Schematics are really like putting together a puzzle. You find the pieces, you link them up. Layout of the board is next. So you get to work with people, the drafters here to do that. I also get involved on my day is very varied based on what's going on. So I also involved in some integration. So I'll take some circuit cards that I've designed, other people have designed, and we put them together to make the box. So I'm working on that sometimes as well. And we get new projects coming in. So I've also been working on a few bids and planning for new projects coming up, understanding the scope of work, how much time and money that'll cost. And we give that up to the programs to plan. So right now, that's been like a full day for me. It's trying to do all those things in one day, which can be very difficult. And sometimes keeps me busy, but you get kind of a wide range of duties that you perform, and it keeps it interesting. You're kind of doing the same thing in theory, but there's always more to learn. There's always new projects. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And I think
Keeps you
too,
energized.
the top level goal of like whatever you're trying to, whether it's something within an airplane, or like you were saying, something with maybe what soldiers carry too.
Yep.
It's cool to know like what the small thing that you're doing contributes to the overall larger project as well. So even if it's the same type of activity, it's the goal at the end is different too. So
Yep.
So basically, if you like puzzles or circuits class in college, you should be an electrical engineer. I actually really like circuits, but chose biomedical for whatever reason. So another question I have is based on how your past experiences have helped you in your job today. So this can be anything pertinent that you can remember from high school or college, or even the years leading up to where you are today in your career. So if there's anything specific that you think really helped you be where you are today, can you share what that is for the girls listening? And Katie, you can go first. I'll just keep picking on Katie first.
Okay. So yeah, I guess there's a few different things that I feel like have been turning points for me. Way back, to college and even a little before, I did really like, solving puzzles, figuring things out. And then, so our first freshman engineering class in college, we did different units on each of the type of engineering, right? And what we did for electrical was we designed basically a robot arm with Lego Mindstorms but there was like a little circuit we had to do to control how fast or slow the arm on the circuit on the robot went up and down. And I was like my first time really looking at schematics. We had to, do the math to figure out how much resistance would then affect the speed and things like that. And I really thought it was cool doing that and how, changing these things that you couldn't even see how, the circuit was running, but it had this effect in the real world. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed exactly how that all worked out and the troubleshooting of measuring the resistance and the voltage and things like that went. So really early on, I was actually came into school as a chemical engineering major, but I loved that circuits class so much in my first intro to engineering. That's what led me down electrical engineering. It was a lot later that I got led into more the management side of things, I'll say. That was probably the next really big change for me was I did my MBA was ultimately what helped me make that decision. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of little and other things around the way. I guess in general, like just being open to new opportunities, having people that I trust to talk to about what's the stuff I've been liking, what that might translate into, has helped me a lot through the years.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for that background. And it's cool you said it was college the first time you were doing that. Yeah.
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 I know. And I know kids these days are getting those opportunities earlier and earlier, right? So
yeah. It's interesting to see like when that spark for electrical went off in someone's brain, because it's hard to know whether or what you should be involved in high school to know if you like electrical engineering. But that's another thing too, is you can go into college and not know and then take those classes and decide that that's something you want to do. Jody, what was your past experiences like to get you to where you are today?
Yeah, so speaking of projects in high school, actually we did circuits in high school when I was in high school too. And it went horribly for me. And I was like, what? No. But that it turned out to be a faulty breadboard in my class, that I got this bad breadboard that didn't work. So none of my circuits worked. I'm like, I don't understand. I was so mad. But later on in high school, we had this computer class, and we actually went out in our community. I live in a very small town. It would help people troubleshoot their computers and like fix them. And we would repair things in our classroom and all that. And I was like, okay, maybe I do like engineering. And I did always like puzzles and math and all that. And you don't really have to like those things, by the way. You just really have to have a drive to solve problems is really all of engineering. But and I originally went to school for computer engineering, but it turns out I really don't like writing code. So I switched partway through my freshman year to pure electrical engineering. And I just really enjoyed it. Like learning about all the logic and doing circuits and in college went much better. And so far pretty good in my career. So it's been pretty fun learning how to solve problems. And along the way, you know, you run into issues, circuits don't work, you help debug things. And really all of those things are what have given me knowledge to do my job better every day. So every time that we learn from either my mistake or someone else's mistake, those were all times when we really learned, hey, how do we properly figure out a problem? How do we come to a solution? And how do we work together as a team to really produce the best result? And I think all of those things have really built up to give me like the career I have today.
Gotcha. So yeah, you mentioned that you were in computer and then switched to electrical. So there must have been something driving you to computer. What was that made you kind of want to do computer but then switch to the electrical? You said not liking programming, but
it was honestly a little bit of a misunderstanding of what computer engineering was. So I think I really liked computers and I liked the idea of like, you know, making things work with code. But I thought it would be a little more mix of designing and doing code, but it kind of felt more pure code. And that embedded was not my path in life.
Yeah. My sister is a software engineer and she just loves code, loves it so much. So that's what you want to do. And that's your passion.
And I like when I make a circuit board, like I have it, I can hold it, I can touch it and I can play with it. And I'm tactile. I like the feeling of like, look at what I did. So that to me was more satisfying.
Katie, going back to your background too, I guess was electrical the first path that you took, and what made you decide to take that path if it was?
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Going back, I'm a third generation and female engineer. Actually, my grandmother was an engineer and things like that. So engineering's definitely in my family. And so I always sort of thought I would do it, but yeah, most of my family are actually chemical engineers. So like I grew up going to my dad's workplace, and he designs soda cans, and he's metallurgical engineering actually, and so he, you know, is optimizing can thickness and things like that. But what that translated to a young girl going to the office was that he got to drop cans from high heights and see how they broke. And I thought that was so cool. And yeah, so I liked that. Yeah, so that's why I thought chemical was more physical than it turned out to be when I got to school, and they were just doing all these intense equations and talking about flow. And I didn't love that as much. But then I saw, like I said, partly of what my classes did, and electrical did have more of that hands-on, get to blow stuff up. But you don't intend to, right? But you know, you get to trial and error. Like that's, I definitely, you know, solve problems, but wanting to be hands-on and try out different things. I get that was one thing I was thinking when you were saying about the software. That's one thing I kind of envy about them, is they've got a lot faster cycle time, right? Like they can try something out, check it and see if it works, and it goes a lot faster than sometimes we have in electrical engineering, especially the further down you get the line. Yeah, you know, if we put something into our circuit cards, sometimes that can be very hard to change. So anyways, but yeah, so that was, for me, I was thinking engineering for a long time, just based on my family and my love of math and the problem solving. But it wasn't until I really got to college and saw which they all were, that I, like I said, saw that I liked the electrical. I liked the working with circuits.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you have to be very careful too from the safety side, because you're mentioning blowing things up. So if you like puzzles or circuits or blowing things up, then maybe
like I said, said,
Um,
usually don't intend to, but it is sort of a
Yeah.
fun way to know.
It's usually
Yeah.
not good if I've blown something. I try
Right.
not to very hard.
Right. It's the goal. Or if you don't like blowing things up, maybe. Okay, so my next question is, what is your favorite part about your job? And then what is the least favorite part about your job? So Jody, I'll have you start so I don't have to pick on Katie anymore.
I guess favorite part of my job is I really do enjoy designing things. I really do like making circuit boards and doing schematics and analyzing my layouts and making sure that it's all right. It's that problem solving piece for me, without having to debug anything yet. But the least favorite part of my job, I would say right now, is probably cost account management. So I also have to manage the time and money that we spend, do claims on that every month and make sure we're on track. And I do it for multiple people and projects. So I do that on the side, and that is probably my least favorite thing to do.
Thanks for that. I think I missed some of that, but I'm going to rewatch it in the video because I was changing my headphones because they were dying because the electrical engineers didn't make the battery long enough on my headphones there.
Oh no.
But Katie,
It wasn't me.
yeah. But Katie, if you want to go ahead too and share your least favorite and favorite, I will rewatch that in the video.
Yeah. I think so. I will say I'll do it to give a different perspective. I was probably pretty similar for Jody when I was an individual electrical engineer as well. I liked actually getting to work on the design, and similarly, it is something that we engineers sometimes fail to account for, but it's necessary. We need to stay on schedule and budget, right? We don't get to just go live off in La La Land and do whatever we want with our designs. And yeah, that is tough. But now as a manager, I guess a lot of my both favorite and least favorite revolve around people. It's funny because yeah, my favorite is working with people and building those great teams. I really love recruiting too. I love getting to go to career fairs and tell people about what I like. And getting them excited about engineering. So yeah, both the people that report to me and going out. My least favorite is working with rough personalities. I would say it is really hard being the one that's responsible if people aren't doing their job or are having conflict in the workplace and things like that. Once again, we wish it was just a utopia where everybody always got along and things were easy. But I'd say that is, like I said, my least favorite, but also a place where I've definitely gotten to grow and learn a lot. My MBA and things like that, I learned a lot about working with people that, like I said, it's not fun, but it's definitely necessary.
Yeah, definitely the pros and cons of being in the manager position for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we are a little over 20 minutes in or so, but I'll probably wrap it up with 2 more questions. So my first one of the last 2 is if you could explain what types of electrical engineering jobs are available, maybe at Collins or maybe at other companies, such as, like where you would maybe start at the company and work your way up, or even management positions. So what you could do that's kind of parallel to electrical engineering, but not specifically within that role. So Jody, if you want to go ahead and start.
Sure. Yeah, even within electrical engineering, Katie mentioned this earlier, there's different scopes of it. So even here, like I'm on digital team, so I do digital hardware engineering. There are RF engineers, there's another team for that. You can specifically design power supplies, so there's a team for that. You want to do antennas, there's a team for that. Microelectronics, like doing tiny little packages and things. So you can really start in a variety of areas, even just as a specifically an electrical engineer. And from there, right, you can stay on a technical path and go up as high as being a fellow at the company. And that requires that, now you are sort of an expert in your field. You go out, you talk amongst other businesses, even like you are kind of responsible for sharing your knowledge amongst businesses, helping everybody at the company with your specialty, that kind of thing. So you can go all the way up to that. You could do architecture. So you could kind of go the other direction and maybe you help architect those programs and you're the electrical engineering voice in how the product works. And yeah, you can go the management route. there's a lot of, or technically you go to technical program management is one place that some people go. So like underneath the program manager is a technical program manager. They're kind of the people facing, talk to the engineers about the technical side of the program, whereas the program engineer or program manager talks to the customer a lot more. Katie can probably give some other really good examples too.
Yeah, and I think those are all good. And yeah, like I said, I think that's, there's definitely, people management, program management, it's all sorts of different managing kind of paths you fall into. I think, like I said, when you first start out, it's always that base that you want to really understand how your company works, how, the technology that you're going to maybe one day go up to be a fellow on or whatnot, getting that base understanding of how to design a circuit card, if that's, the standard. But yeah, and like I said, here at Collins, most of our electrical engineers probably have a little bit of that base of designing some type of circuit, right? Whether it's, as she said, digital, RF, antenna, a smaller package. But that's even also still here at Collins, right? Wider range of electrical engineering, as I sort of alluded to before. You could be designing power grids. You could be designing more like systems on a chip, which is like, working in Silicon Valley kind of level of working at a really small transistor level design. You can get into more of the, computer side of things. I mean, there are so many different ranges of what electrical engineers do. You could also do more, consulting is a general term, and that can be, once again, I think a lot of engineering applies to consulting as well, right? Electrical is a great one to that. Chemical, civil, a lot of them, you learn how to break down a process and optimize the process. For electrical, we usually base it on our electrical systems and circuits. Chemical, it's on flow and stuff like that. But in the end, a lot of it is just understanding how, once again, if something works, solving that problem and then optimizing it. So yeah, you could end up, like I think I know some electrical engineers that basically like work for financial systems, right? And same sort of thing that they, you learned how the process works and you change it. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways. But like I said, I think almost all, definitely here at Collins, and I think in a lot of electrical engineering places, a lot of them, they want you to learn the product first. They want you to learn how to do and design what we make first, and then you can go almost anywhere.
Is it a preference too of wanting to expand your technical knowledge so that you get exposure in like digital RF antenna, or is it like you kind of focus on one and move up the chain that way? Is there a typical path that you see?
I guess I've seen both for sure. I think we tend to ultimately, especially like, so if you're going to be a manager or both product or, a program management sort of stuff or people, it's less necessary that you focus on a certain type of circuit. You might, oversee people working on lots of different things. So it's not, doesn't usually tie you down. It tends to happen if you're going to stay that technical and try to go into, the product or fellow that you usually try to focus on knowing how to really design one or the other, because that's what's required for you to do those, be that lead engineer, is that you really understand this type of circuit and how to design it and make it. Yes, Jody.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, there are people who do move. Like I had a coworker and he moved around to different groups. He even switched to like, hey, you know what? I want to learn how to do firmware. So he switched to be a firmware engineer, and he, went to the RF team for a little bit from the digital team. But all of that kind of led into him wanting to be a systems engineer, which is a good point, because you can transition to systems engineer from pretty much any role in the company. Any engineering role can switch to systems. And I have a coworker that she was an electrical engineer and she just switched to systems this last year, year or two or so. And she was up for engineer of the year this year. So she did well for herself switching there. Yeah, you can move around quite a bit here, but if you want to be kind of an expert in your field, you sort of do end up sticking with one thing.
To kind of create your own path depending on what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And then my last question is, what advice would you give to high school students or students in college, mainly high school, since that's the area of where we typically have people watching these videos, but what advice can you give to those students to be successful in engineering, electrical, or just engineering in general, of what they can be, you know, focusing in on their last year, like senior year or wherever they're at in their high school and college journey? What advice do you have for them? And Katie, I'll have you start.
Okay, well, I guess first is probably don't give up, right? Like I said, I think especially in your senior year, maybe you've settled in and you sort of understand, but you might be starting to get like some of those tough AP classes, or, you know, and then going into college, you know, that first year, some of those things can be a shock, and you might, you know, like I said, it feels like that GPA is everything when you're that age, and it's not, right? You want to be trying to learn. You want to be figuring out, you know, how things work and understanding things. You might not be a great test taker, or you might not understand this one concept. You know, don't give up because of that, right? Or you might have a rough teacher. Don't give up. You know, find other paths. You know, and try to, you know, like I said, if you feel like you like to solve problems, just because you don't understand differential equations, that doesn't need to stop you, right? So, like I said, I think there's grades are just numbers. In the end, you know, like I said, they'll be looked at your first job interview and never again. So it seems like it's such a big thing these days, but you know, at this point in your life, but in the end, it isn't as much.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Jody, do you have some to share?
Yeah, I mean, I guess similar to Katie said, like even if it seems like maybe it isn't the right thing for you because this one thing didn't work. I mean, my first circuits didn't work at all, and now all I do is design circuits. So you never know. School is for learning how to solve problems. Going to school and going to college will not teach you how to do your job. So, you know, take it as an opportunity to understand how to learn, understand how to, you know, solve problems and work with others, and just, you know, keep going and try things out, you know, get internships in things that you think you may be interested in. And if you're not interested in them, that's okay. And it's okay to change your mind, and it's okay to not have it all figured out, because hardly anybody does. And, you know, people change career paths at Collins and they go back to school when they get here to go do a different career. So you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to have it all figured out. Just keep going, keep trying, and use your network.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because when I was in school, I was really focused on grades, and I think learning how to learn is a big one to take away, and not only focusing on your classes, but like you said, getting outside exposure to other types of things will certainly help when you get to the interviewing stage and, you know, going into your career. So I think that's all really great advice. That's all I had for questions for you guys today. I just wanted to say thank you so much for jumping on this panel, and I really appreciate it. And if I have any follow-up questions from the girls, I'll be sure to reach out and let you guys know. But thank you.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, let's see how I start.